Hi, Will.
Hey.
I have several questions
Okay.
about metrics and
About the
psychiatry.
Matrix.
Yeah.
Great. One of my favorite topics.
I have schizophrenia, and I realized that for me, as you have said, is the best way to keep my delusions for 10 or 15% active. Can you say something about this philosophy? Because it's strange that I heard the same about you.
Yeah, I think it's all about not being overwhelmed. So one of the ways that we can get overwhelmed is if we push something totally away, if we don't deal with feelings or thoughts or conflicts in our life and we just bury them, then they come back and they can overwhelm us. So if we can deal with it, but just in small bite-sized ways so that it's not overwhelming, but we're also not just burying it. I think that's really, really important. And the key thing is the relationship that we have to it. So if we feel if things are happening on our terms, if we have some control and empowerment, it really changes the whole equation. It can make us feel more in a place of accepting and living with these experiences. And also I think that they're a creative part of us. They come from maybe a spiritual place, or they come from a very ancient place, and they have lessons for us, and they have gifts, and they have things that they can teach us if we don't let it get totally overwhelming, if we don't let ourselves not sleep, for example, or we don't eat, or we don't take care of the relationships that we have, or the different responsibilities that we have. Maybe we need to step back from those things sometimes, but we don't want to be so much out of control with it that it just overwhelms us, and then we can't really have our feet on the ground at the same time.
And how you personally try to keep this balance, to have some belief in science, coincidence, and not become overwhelmed?
Well, I really try and keep track both of what my thinking is, the connections that I'm seeing, and the symbolic network of meaning that I'm observing and noticing, and also the thinking as well as my emotions. So I try and really not lose touch with my body and my emotional self. And as soon as I start feeling that I'm getting afraid or starting to have panic or terror, then I attend to that and I disengage from the problem solving and the symbol tracking and the noticing that's going on. And I just really try and take care of myself. And that can mean anything from just spacing out in front of a movie, or talking to my friend and getting support, or it could be being in nature, or anything that's going to help nurture my sense of groundedness in my body and my sense of emotional well-being. And then I come back to the, hunting things down on the internet, or looking for symbolic connections, or starting to analyze and interpret my dreams, or talking about different things that I'm seeing coincidentally and synchronistically. So it's all about, learning how to navigate something and move through it. And everybody's going to have their own way. But what I've seen is that really not being isolated and alone, having good connections and good friendships that you are trusting and safe is really important, and trying to cultivate some power and control in your life so that you're making decisions that feel good to you, that your voice is getting heard, and that you really can start to live the way that you want to live on your own terms.
Now I have two more questions. Okay. One is quite nice, and the second is a bit like not so nice.
Oh, okay.
So
the not so nice one first, or
nice, not nice first.
Yeah, that might be get taken care of.
We know that.
Of the nice one.
Okay,
yeah.
A lot of people in Czech Republic believed in recovery movement, but somehow not everyone succeeds. As we have heard in discussion. How do you feel about this, that for some people you may be something like a half one-eyed king in an amount of blind people, like showing them way, but some of them are lost on this track?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's really important that we recognize that when we're talking about madness, when we're talking about the things that get called psychosis, we're really at the heart of the mystery of what it is to be human. No one has a recipe, no one has an analysis or an interpretation or a solution. And we really need to respect that different people are going to have different paths, and sometimes people do get lost, or they do get overwhelmed, or they do, end up not finding their way forward. I feel that the situation around psychosis and extreme states and altered states of consciousness, it's really like the gay liberation movement. If you're surrounded by a society that's unsupportive and that is scared of you and that stigmatizes you and scapegoats you, then it's going to be really hard for you to find your own freedom and your liberation. And so I think a lot of the people who are struggling and haven't been able to find their way forward, it's because the society isn't giving them enough support, isn't giving them enough of a context that actually is going to make it possible for them to find their way. And so I think that we need to work individually with people, but we also need to work to change the society and make the society more of a proactive and supportive context that people can grow and learn from. And then I think we have to be creative. We have to try all kinds of different approaches and be humble as well, because we are dealing with a mystery that has been a big part of human society and human culture throughout being human began. And so it's not always true that people get initiated into being a shaman. It's not always true that people come back with gifts and they learn. Sometimes in all cultures and all societies historically, there have been people who die or who are just lost to madness or lost in the wilderness or overwhelmed. And we have to really, really humble ourselves before that mystery of what it is to be human and what it is to go mad.
Yes, I believe that in our society, in Czech Republic, it's a bit more dangerous than in Lapland or something like this. You go, and if you can't rely on someone, well, it's difficult. And the second question.
Thought about that. Was that I just haven't thought about that. Which I think that in life we often see people that we wish we could help them, but for whatever reason we can't. And I'm not talking about mental health issues. I'm talking about people who get lost in a bad marriage, or they're in a bad career situation, or they seem to have just wasted their talents, or maybe they're caught up in an addiction, or they seem stuck in their lives. And this is really, really hard to see people who are suffering and to not know how to help them. But that's also part of the human condition. We can't always control or help or save other people, and we do the best that we can, and we try and create the best circumstances and possibilities. But ultimately, it's also up to that person to find their own way on some level.
And now the last question.
Okay.
I remember we have some conversation, therapeutic via Skype.
Uh-huh.
I really remember it, maybe you not. And I believe that you are Jungian psychoanalytic, and you believe in energies, and that's all these things in Czech Republic. The psychiatrists are saying that's dangerous for psychosis, like chakras dangerous for psychosis. How to say it?
Yeah.
Psychoanalysis also dangerous. Regressive therapy also dangerous. They want to stop the delusions completely, and then put the person without delusions into the so-called normal society. But then the people are mummified, and they have no energy because what do you think about this process particular?
So this is the good question? Is this the good question you're going to ask me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm very influenced by Jungian approaches, but I really try and have a real flexibility. Look, if psychiatry works for people, if people are able to get support and help through their medications and through the hospitals and through the diagnosis, then great. But I would ask a psychiatrist who says that these things are dangerous, I would ask them, how effective is their approach with the people that they work with? And maybe if they're not actually helping as many people as they need to, they should be more open-minded to people exploring their own way. The reality is that saying one size fits all, or saying that chakra approaches or dreams or these other approaches are wrong for everyone, it just isn't true. The reality is that if you look at the research literature, psychoanalysis has helped people with psychotic experiences. Psychotherapy does help people diagnosed with schizophrenia. Many, many people who have these diagnoses have been helped with spiritual views by chakras and this kind of approach, energy medicine. So it's absolutely wrong what they're saying, to just make it a strong, dogmatic, rigid thing that these are the wrong things to do. Now, I think that it really reflects their fear as a profession. Maybe they had a bad experience with one person doing this, and so then they assume everybody is going to have a bad experience. But I think that the profession of medicine in general is often very rigid, and it's often very fear-based, and it just sticks to its own dogma of what has been taught institutionally by the profession. And they have this whole institutional backup. They have all these other psychiatrists and doctors who are all thinking the same way, and it really becomes like a groupthink. It becomes like a conformist dogma of that institution. And so my question is really, what is it that helps each individual person, and exploring it uniquely based on what is working for them, rather than having any kind of assumption that one way is the best way for everybody or a different way is dangerous for everybody. Because the reality is that going to the psychiatrist and doing what the psychiatrist says is very dangerous for a lot of people.
Yes, thank you. I believe so, and also I lived through that you have no psychotherapy in mental health hospital. There's nothing like that.
No, it's terrible.
So, Will, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your tomorrow workshop, and hope you will come back to Czech Republic again.
It's a really great honor to be invited here. Wonderful people, wonderful place to teach, and a lot of interest and enthusiasm and openness. And so thank you very much for the invitation.